Newsfirst, NewsLine with Faraz Shaukatali.
And a wonderful morning to you. This is Newsline, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And this morning to discuss the Bondgate and its political fallout is Mr. Rusiripala Tennakoon. Very good morning to you, Mr. Rusiripala.
Morning, Faraz.
And thank you for being on our program. You were also actually on news on Pathikar earlier, weren't you?
Yes.
Mr. Rusiripala, I want to pose the question to you. Bondgate. Everyone's talking about Bondgate. Bondgate, what is its political fallout? What is its political impact?
I think, Faraz, in the political history of this country, we haven't come across an event of this importance politically exposed to this extent. So now the whole country is waiting for the recommendations of the Bond Commission, supposed to be completing by the 8th of December. So we hope, and we are all looking forward to see what the recommendations are going to be. And it is the political impact of this entire exercise would be felt only after the recommendations are given.
Right.
Because the recommendations, that what we expect is, recommendations have to fall in line with the provisions in the Act. The Act very clearly states, the Act, that is the Presidential Commission's Inquiry Act. Now this is not only an inquiry, this is an investigation cum inquiry.
I see.
And then the commissioners are expected to report on the investigation aspect as well as the inquiry aspect.
Right.
Both are combined. So this is a very important aspect of this whole exercise. Then the Act very clearly states that the commissioners will have to make recommendations specifically giving the disciplinary actions that they are recommending for each of the offences or commitments that they find during the process of this investigation and the inquiry. That is one aspect. The second thing is there is a section in this Act which empowers the Attorney General to start criminal procedure actions against any offences that he could categorize as or being recommended as criminal offences that fall into that category in this whole exercise. So as far as you and I mean, we have seen, we have been studying this in and out, we have been discussing this matter.
Indeed.
We know there have been misdirections. There have been wrong directives given. There have been strong, serious violations of procedures. Then there have been offences of, favoritism. All these things we have seen. Now we want to see how these things get manifested in the form of recommendations from the Commission. So it is definitely leading to a very strong and serious political impact in this country, because anybody besides the pursuing of action based on the recommendations, the very fact that if a recommendation is made by the Commission specifically against somebody, I mean, there should be, in the name of democracy, in the name of Westminster practice, that they should say adios to the political field. We are waiting for that.
Now then, I want to ask you this question. I've been reading with some interest the answers provided by Ranil Wickremesinghe, the minister in charge of the subject of the central bank. In there, he was asked a question as to whether they had carried out any study on the pros and cons of the changing the system of awarding bonds from the existing system to one where it's completely auction based. And his answer was no, that they were quite busy servicing two lots of economies, one on the books and one off the books. Yeah. And he then went on to say, he went back to 1977, and he said that, you know, this economic liberalization started then, and that these are the policies of his party, and so on. It was I read that time and time again, and I was wondering to myself whether he is trying to cleanse the lack of the departure from procedure conducted by Mr. Mahendran when he did not go to the Monetary Board to discuss this requirement from the by the Prime Minister, the Minister in charge. And then he was asked, was it an order? No, it was Mr. Mahendran would be aware of the policies. But does being aware of these liberal policies where the Prime Minister says that they wanted market forces to take over rather than fix the rates and so on, is that a mitigating circumstance to depart from procedure?
For us, a logical analysis of the evidence or explanation given by the Prime Minister for that question will show nothing else but a deviation from the procedures according to his fancies or according to what he thought was correct to be done at that time. But the fact of the matter is, what he thinks sometimes is the right process is not the legally valid process in this country. There are certain requirements for a policy decision to take shape. Mm-hmm. You know, a policy decision can be born in the mind of a person, yeah, but that doesn't become the law or an implementable directive by merely because it was born in the mind of somebody.
Indeed, and when you say that, what strikes me as well, yes, is that the same Prime Minister said, yes, at the same commission, yes, that there was no policy decision, yes, to ask the state institutions and the banks to bid low at this auction, yeah, because that's what Finance Minister Ravi Karunaka said at the time. Yeah. He had 2 meetings with these state banks and other state institutions, yeah, and asked them to bid low because he said he wanted to drive the rates down. Now, yeah, the Prime Minister says that there was no such policy. So in a way he's taking issue with what the then Finance Minister said. And on the other side, Mr. Rusiripala, he then says that in short, that there was a departure from procedure. They didn't in changing the system. So where is the policy for that?
No, you see, we are going into another area when this the question of the state banks asked by the Finance Minister then, yeah, not to bid is another issue. Right. But coming back to this directive given by the Prime Minister, yeah, there are 2 aspects to it. He has given a directive without considering the factors that should be considered to arrive at a decision like that in keeping with the monetary policy of the country. There is a monetary law act that is in operation. There is a practice that has been followed by the central bank officials in arriving at decisions of this nature. They take into account a whole heap of factors surrounded, before they arrive at a decision to change a practice. It can't just be taken because in 1977 there was liberalization, and he wants that certainly if the liberalization is required, yeah, and if a change of the procedure is required, those aspects have to be paid due attention.
And they must be given legal bearing to them.
Barring the legal thing, yeah, the factors have to be considered by those who are taking the decision. Yeah. So he has violated that, definitely, because by giving that directive, one thing I must say, in favor of the Prime Minister, you can't expect the Prime Minister to follow up whether the Governor of the Central Bank has followed this directive in the correct manner.
He can't be micromanaged.
He can't be doing that, you know, right. Because the Governor should have known to place that before the Monetary Board and get the approval and the sanction of the Monetary Board and the authority to implement that. That's another aspect. So he falls into that mess. By virtue of the statement given by the Prime Minister, there is no way out for the Governor of the Central Bank. He has definitely violated the procedure. But the Prime Minister cannot be held responsible for that part. But the Prime Minister is responsible for having given a directive, policy directive, without taking into account all the factors and allowing it to be taken at the proper forum.
In talking about effects of various decisions, I noticed that you've got this book here. What is this thing that you brought today?
No, Faraz, I came across a very interesting thing.
Right.
Because this Sujiva Serasinghe saga.
Sujiva Serasinghe,
you know that he was talking very loud and openly and criticizing the president of this country, saying that, accusing that the president appointed this commission to, you know, bring dissension among the UNP or something like that.
Sujiva Serasinghe said that that was his personal opinion.
No, whatever it is, he has expressed his personal opinion in public. What we are worried of is not about whether it is personal or his party decision. He, as a sitting MP and a junior minister or state minister, when he makes a statement, you know, it can be personal, but still it is a statement that has to be reckoned. So, you know, he is a person who has written a book. When did he write this book? I think your channel gave a very good
July, August 2015.
2015, July. And he said that all these telephone calls were for him to get educated about the system before he wrote the book.
And that he'd spoken to Arjuna Aloysius and Arjuna Mahendran about that.
And then it became apparently it was not true. Because he had written the book and the calls were communicated long after.
Well, but 62 of those calls were in 2016.
2016. I came across another thing. Now, this gentleman has written a book. And it is published about the bond operation in this country. And this whole, you know, the episode.
At the Natta.
At the Natta. And in October 2016, I have the COPE committee report here.
That's what it is.
This is what it is. You know, where Dr. Harsha De Silva was talking about the profits, how the profits were earned by perpetual treasuries. He very correctly pointed out that these most of these profits were earned illegitimately by these perpetual treasuries in the secondary market. Now, there is a very interesting thing. Honorable Sujiva Serasinghe says he did not know about a secondary market then. Now, this is
the person who wrote the book.
The person who was trying to educate the people in this country by writing a book did not know that in this bond operation there was what is called a secondary market. So, I mean, this is, I can quote verbatim what he has said.
Please do.
No, it says, Garu Acharya Harsha De Silva, make a perpetual treasuries limited එකේ ලාභයක් එක්ක ලඝු කරන්න එපා. Perpetual Treasuries Limited ලාභය ලබා ගත්තේ primary market එකෙන් නෙවෙයි. Perpetual Treasuries Limited ලාභ ලබා ගත්තේ secondary market එකෙන්. ගරු සුජීව සේරසිංහ මහතා, එහෙමද? මම දන්නේ නැහැනේ ඒක. Now, this is what we say. Most of these parliamentarians, they talk sometimes and they don't mean, they don't know sometimes what they're talking about. So it is very unfortunate.
President Sirisena said as much.
Because we expect the parliamentarians to maintain a certain standard, at least because they are representing the views of the people in this country. We have a respect to the parliament. We have a respect to the parliamentarians. It's not the education. All the parliamentarians in this country are not university graduates.
Yeah.
They have been people,
and they don't need to be.
They have been postmen.
Yeah.
In the parliament.
Indeed.
But we respect them because they were parliamentarians and they behave like that. But this type of irresponsible things or statements, accusations.
In English, there's a wonderful word for that.
Yes.
It's called flippant.
I think that's the right word. So this type of flippant behavior, statements will not be tolerated by the public.
And on that note, we'll come back and we'll discuss the Foreign Exchange Act after this break. Don't go away. This is Newsline. Good morning again and welcome back to Newsline, where we're joined by Mr. Rusiripala Tennakoon, and we're about to ask him, Mr. Rusiripala, the Foreign Exchange Act. There's some concern that one of the main things in this Foreign Exchange Act is that one can bring monies. The cut-off point is $1 million, and anything above that will attract a fee of 1%, and anything below that, there's no fee. But why are people saying that Sri Lanka may become the hub for money laundering activities?
For us, in the world, there are a few countries which are categorized as havens for black money.
Right.
People earn illegitimately, and they they send their money for safety and future use to such places.
Right.
Now, certainly, most of the countries in the world, however much they are in need of foreign currency and foreign investment or exchange, they will not resort to that type of openings. But in this case, the Sri Lanka has had a long-standing exchange control policy. I mean, we safeguarded the going out of the exchange, as well as we have monitored the incoming of the exchange, because we were in keeping with the international requirements, for money laundering and all that.
And Sri Lanka is a signatory to the anti-money laundering, global anti-money laundering and terrorist financing conventions.
This is a concern of the whole world today. There are monitoring authorities and bodies which look after this aspect, because the banks are asked to act with vigilance with regard to this matter. They can't just freely accept or permit the flowing out of exchange. But this Exchange Act has been hurriedly passed in this country in some priority which we cannot understand. I think thanks to the exposure that your channel started some time back, which is most timely and important, although it is belated, because it has become law now. Unfortunately, when we started discussing this matter, it is law today.
But there is another bunch of critics are saying that this act, when it was its bill, it was presented by the then Finance Minister, Rusiripala Tennakoon. And people are saying that this new act, the Foreign Exchange Act, will have a direct result on some charges against him. Can you tell us what those charges are?
Definitely, the whole entire episode is tainted with that bad impression. Because all of us know, it's a public knowledge, that the former Minister of Finance, Rusiripala Tennakoon, was charged, and there was a case against him along with two others in a court of law in this country. That is for inward remittance of a large sum of foreign exchange at that time, which violated the existing Exchange Control Act,
which has now been repealed.
So under that act, the charges were framed, and the court case unfortunately was taken up for final decision only after he became the Minister of Finance. Right. But then I don't know whether that had an impact or not.
Well, it was taken up before, but it came to an end.
It got dragged in the normal course of events, by the absence of lawyers and so on. Our normal litigation process. But then finally, when it was taken up for a decision, the decision was very clear that due to a technical reason, there are, in the
yes, so it's to do with the date of the offence.
Something like that, in the case of law, the cases, court cases, there are many instances like that. So the judge or the judges, they dismissed the case on that ground, stating that again action can be instituted on the same charges by the Attorney General by reframing and omitting these mistakes. This was not done. And what happened was, the matter has gone into oblivion completely. Now it has gone down. In the meantime, hurriedly, this Exchange Control Act was passed in the Parliament, and surreptitiously there is a clause in this act which absolves all the pending cases and all the cases that have gone into oblivion, like that of Mr. Ravi Karunanayake. That is the end of the case.
Is that because there is this 6 months transitional period?
No, 6 months applies to cases that are pending before courts.
Right.
But in the case of this former finance minister's case, Ravi Karunanayake's matter, there is no case installed now. So they cannot now file another fresh case. You see, you can see to what extent the law can be used as an ass to ride for people to ride its back.
So not only has the central bank, the treasury, been raped in terms of the bond scandal, here we have laws that are being changed and amended and introduced to benefit some of them.
The context in which these laws are passed cause serious doubts about the pending hurried laws that they are trying to pass in this Parliament.
So is it a good thing to attract foreign investment into our country, or funds in the guise of foreign investment, without these checks and balances?
No, certainly not. Certainly not. It will have impacts. The people who bring in money are up to some kind of mischief in this form. And don't you think that they will use the same mischief to take that money out also? So what will happen is, this country will become a transition point, not a place for where they will keep the money forever.
In a matter in the Commercial High Court, it transpires that a group that is partially listed, partially privately held, that they had monies or assets, mainly cash, in a tax haven in Gibraltar.
Yes.
Now that money, the value of that at the time was around $210 million. Now, according to the new Foreign Exchange Act, if they were to bring this $210 million, they can do that and pay 1% tax.
Yes.
Right. But the principal question as to how that money was accumulated overseas and whether it was against the then Exchange Control Act, and that for all these years that act has been broken and so on, and that no action is being taken against those people, how does that sit then?
Whereas while money is important, it is also important to look into the ethical aspects of the earnings of the monies also. The world is interested in those. The legality behind all these transactions is an important thing, because if anybody has resorted to some illegal means of earning money, such people bringing in money, the money will come, but the money will flow out or go in another direction in the same illegal way.
And it might be used to fund terrorism and all sorts of things.
Why? How can we rule that out?
Indeed, we can't rule
Therefore,
it out.
that ethical part is important.
Isn't that then the reason why we need educated members of Parliament, not idiots?
We are experiencing, this Parliament, unfortunately for us, they have been roused to, carry to situations, unexpected situations, to unnoticingly get certain things passed.
So in that case, Mr. Rusiripala, our original question this morning was Bondgate and its political impact.
Yes.
In that case, isn't it absolutely shocking that members of the joint opposition or so on are not in unison with the efforts of President Sirisena to fight this very important battle, corruption, right? So they've split now, and they're not at every juncture. The president seems to be having a problem, and he is the man, after all, who's got the mandate, whether we like it or not, right? He's got the majority mandate. And isn't it therefore absolutely shocking that his hands are being pulled in all sorts of directions and he's not being allowed to go forward? The minute he had this bond commission, even now, the people are talking about parliamentary privileges. That's all rubbish, as you explained in the Sinhalese program.
Yeah.
There is no such thing. So, Mr. Rusiripala, tell me, isn't that shocking what they're doing?
For us, the final say, whether we like or not, is in the hands of the president.
Right.
The whole country is waiting for the recommendations of this bond commission to come out on the 8th of December. And there is a certainty, there is some degree of certainty that we can expect, a legitimate expectation arising out of this bond commission, because what the commission has to do has been specifically stated by way of under the law applicable and also by way of the Gazette notification that issued by the president. So the recommendation will undoubtedly lead to state that whether a commitment has been made by anybody and what the disciplinary action that the commission recommends for those. And besides, there's another point. There is another section in the Act, the Presidential Commission Act, that is applicable in this case, where the Attorney General is empowered to institute criminal procedure against violations that come out in the process of this investigation. And remember, this is not only an inquiry, this is an investigation cum inquiry.
Those are very clear.
Those are very clear words. It can be either investigation or inquiry. But in this case, it is an investigation and an inquiry. So therefore, if anybody thinks by giving flimsy evidence or giving some explanation, they can get over it. It is not the case.
Now I want to ask you the final question.
Yes.
Now they're taking issue about the way the Prime Minister said, oh well, the previous system, he called it private placement, we call it direct placements, and so on, was fraught with corruption and so on. He's never to this date proved any of that. So he says that on the one side.
Yes.
Can you tell me, Mr. Rusiripala, you're a former chairman of the Bank of Ceylon. Tell me, what is the system in operation now?
There are very many things arising out of that statement. That statement has been negated by the very action of the central bank, which is still operating under his ministry, by the monetary board, by passing a regulation as a decision of the monetary board, that the system should be a hybrid system with direct placement plus the auction going together simultaneously, which amounts to a complete negation of the directive given by the Prime Minister in charge of this subject. I mean, what more proof you require for us to say that the directive that he gave was not sustainable, not applicable, not authoritative, not acceptable under the monetary law of this country?
Very well said, because that is actually what has happened.
Yes.
Extraordinary people are actually quite ordinary people who do everything in life with extraordinary passion. Mr. Rusiripala Tennakoon, thank you very much for being on Newsline.
Thank you, Faraz.
Take care and God bless.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.